At Baker's, no matter where you order free pickup, you get the same great deals as you'd get in-store. So you can save when you order during band practice, or at the dog park, or wherever. Start your cart with the Baker's app and save from wherever today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. $35 order minimum. Restrictions may apply. Subject to availability.
Get more ways to save at the Buy 5 or More Save $1 each sale. Just buy 5 or more participating items and save $1 each with card. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Hey, it's Mistress Carrie, reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 104 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. Before we get to this week's guest, Jeremy Popoff from Lit, I want to remind you that Facebook's parent company, Meta, has announced that they are going to be discontinuing podcast integration on Facebook. What does that mean for you? Well, if you're used to listening to the Mistress Carrie podcast episodes when they propagate on your Facebook timeline because you like the Mistress Carrie Facebook page, that is going to go away, and they haven't announced exactly when. So if you like listening to the Mistress Carrie podcast, make sure you follow and subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast wherever else you'd like to listen to it. That includes Apple, Google, iHeart, Odyssey, Spotify, Pandora, and so many more. Just search for the Mistress Carrie podcast. And you can always find all of the episodes at mistresscarrie.com. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Boldfoot Socks. Boldfoot Socks is proud to source their materials and to manufacture their products right in the United States. Boldfoot Socks is family and veteran owned, and they donate 5% of their profits to U.S. military and veterans in need. You can find Boldfoot Socks at boldfoot.com. While you're there, you can join the Sock of the Month Club. You can shop for dressy or casual socks. You can check out their patterns in argyle, chevron, digital camo, patriotic socks, stripes, unique socks. There's gift packs, polka dots, premium solids, compression socks, athletic socks, and so much more. And you even get a free 3 months of sock insurance. So if your socks rip, tear, or develop holes, they're going to replace them with no questions asked. Yes, they've got women's socks, and they've got extra large sizes in socks as well for people with big feet. Find Boldfoot Socks online at boldfoot.com. This week's guest is Jeremy Popoff from the band Lit, who are getting ready to release their new album, Tastes Like Gold, coming up on June 17th. They're also getting ready to wrap up their spring-loaded tour at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut on June 4th. Jeremy and I sat down to talk about a lot of stuff. Obviously, their biggest hit, My Own Worst Enemy. We talked songwriting, COVID, podcasts, inspiration. We talked radio. We talked about his love and my hatred for the game of golf. We talked heavy metal, Rupert Neve, vinyl, Bluetooth, Radio Shack, and so much more. Jeremy was so fun to get to know, and I loved having him on the show. So allow me to introduce you to Jeremy Popoff from Lit.
Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Her hair so lovely, pretty eyes.
Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, Bruce Dickinson here from Iron Maiden. Yes, indeed, Miss Whiplash herself, Mistress Carrie, is here to unchain your brain.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you're listening to, you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie. Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Hello, Jeremy.
How are you?
Thanks for joining me today. What's going on?
My pleasure. Well, it's a beautiful day here in Nashville, Tennessee, and I am a little bit of iPhone hell, but other than that, I think it's going to be a good day.
I always ask, I am fantastic. Thank you for asking. I always ask people where they are because touring bands, half the time they don't know. You are in a city that has come up so many times on the show over the last couple years. Is literally every band in Nashville now? Is that where everybody has to be?
Well, it started out as just a place that creative people felt, inspired and welcomed in. And then it just became logistically, like, it made so much more sense as a touring band. I mean, I think bands are getting hip to the idea of, like, there's no state income tax, and it's like 2 hours from every other state, and it's just super easy to get in and out of. And so I mean, I think a lot of bands are here. It's crazy. I started coming here about 17 years ago to write songs, and it was predominantly a country music market, and now it's like it's just everybody's here. LA and New York left and came here.
Well, growing up outside of Boston like I did, if you said Nashville, I just thought cowboy boots, cowboy hats, that's all it was, until I visited and I was like, oh, wait, this whole city's just built on live music. This is crazy.
Yeah, no, it is. It's crazy. And it's all over the place too. I live out in Franklin, about 30 minutes south of Nashville. And even here, like, I was at a place last night and there was an open mic night and a line of like 25 aspiring singers, waiting to get up to sing a song. And it's everywhere. It's just a music town.
I talked to a lot of artists about their songwriting style and the idea of how songwriting kind of works in Nashville, because I'm not a musician. I'm not a songwriter. I don't have the ability. Are you able to kind of take a lunch date with a stranger and try and write a song the way they do in Nashville? Can you do that?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I fell in love with about Nashville, many years ago. It was a completely new experience for me. We went from, jamming in a warehouse and a case of Natural Light beer and just jamming and building off of riffs and stuff to literally, getting together at noon with a couple of strangers and leaving with a song. That process really kind of blew my mind. And it really changed the way we write, because at some point, like, you go from that warehouse and that case of beer and that, like, that innocent time where that's all you had. That's all the whole world revolved around that, and then you have some success, and then you've got 4 guys now that have 4 houses and have, significant others and dogs and kids and this and that. And the getting together part becomes more of like, you got to schedule that stuff, So the discipline, I think, that we learned in Nashville, lended itself to how we ended up needing to do it, years later, when everybody has so many different things going on. You set an appointment, you get together, you know why you're getting together, and you have that purpose, and it's kind of cool.
They say you have your whole life to write your first record, right? And then, then it's a little more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, there's just more moving parts, as you get, and I think it's that way with anything, really. I mean, it's just, you're getting older and your life is happening, and you're growing as a person, and so yeah, you kind of have to find that new way of getting it done. But I love that process. I still, to this day, thousands of songs later, I still am blown away by the process of walking into a room with nothing, and then walking out with a song that could potentially be in somebody's wedding or at somebody's funeral or at somebody's backyard party with all their friends. It's like, and it didn't exist 3 hours ago. And that is just something that blows my mind still to this day,
I'm fascinated by the process because, again, I can't do it. So tell me what your process is. Do you start with a riff? Do you start with a melody idea? Do you have a book of lyrics that you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with an idea and jot down on the bedside table? How does it start for you?
It's literally all of those things. And I don't, I just sort of embrace it however it comes. So sometimes it's a riff, sometimes it's most often, probably these days, it'll start with like a melody and an idea, like a title or a lyric or something. being around songwriters is, we're always listening and we're always jotting stuff down. So, just in conversations or, things that people do or say, whatever, we're constantly looking for something that, that like, ooh, that has a ring to it, and then, so my notes in my iPhone, is just full of random crap that people say, or that I hear I'll hear a line and then I'll twist it, and write it down a different way. But it just, there's really no set formula, it's however it comes, we'll take it,
When it comes to songwriting, things got a lot more complicated for bands that had that collaborative process in the garage, like you were talking about, that, COVID and having band members in different states or different countries where you couldn't physically get together. Were you able to write remote? Is that how this new Lit record was written, or were you guys actually able to get together and do it in person?
We did most of it in person, and we did a couple of Zoom writes and we hated it, but we actually got a couple of great songs. There's a song called Life That I Got that we wrote with American Authors guys, and one of the guys was in Nashville and the other guy was in LA, and then AJ and I were in Nashville and in our houses, and it's four dudes in four different locations, but it came out awesome. And that was one of the times where we were like, okay, we can do this. In a way, it opened up opportunities. Like AJ and I wrote a song with Phil Collin from Def Leppard, and he was in California. We were in Nashville. That was an opportunity that probably wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for Zoom. But at the same time, it feels kind of like wearing two condoms. I mean, it's like, it doesn't, there's no vibe. There's no connection really.
I know something cool's happening. I just can't feel it.
Yeah, exactly. So we luckily the majority of the record we wrote with Carlo and Eric, who co-produced the record with us, and it probably the main reason is because so many dudes were so hell bent on Zoom writing, and we were like, man, that sucks. And so we were able to just like get together in my backyard or AJ's backyard, and there were a couple times where Carlo had issues with he unfortunately it was really sad, but he lost his dad to COVID, and he was a little bit more. He was never weird and freaked out, but he'd wear a mask while we were writing, and we were cool with that. And we would all kind of, especially in the beginning of the pandemic when no one really knew what was up, we would all hang out in the backyard, and we would all be, a few feet from each other and kind of just trying to be respectful. But the idea that we were able to find those dudes and that they were willing to do the in-person thing during a time when people were so freaked out by it. And I think that's really probably why they ended up being, well, other than the fact that they're awesome, but, we found something that was working, and we just kept running with it. And then we had an album. So.
You're one in a pretty prestigious list of bands that has a set of brothers in the band. So when you sit down to write songs, usually you bring your personal experience as a songwriter to the table, but you share so much of your personal experience with a sibling. Do you and AJ kind of have almost that twin language where you come up with ideas at the same time? Or even though you're brothers and kind of grew up together, you have completely different perspectives on things? How does that work with you guys?
I think it's maybe a little bit of both. I mean, we definitely, we don't really have that twin thing. He and I are like pretty different when it comes to like the way we think and look at stuff but yeah, we definitely 40 years of making up things together. We kind of have an unspoken language, I guess.
I talked to the guys from Biffy Clyro recently, and they're not just brothers, they are twins, and that happens with them, that they come up with the same idea at the same time. So I was just curious if it works with all brothers? Is it only twins? Like, I'm fascinated by it,
Yeah, I mean, it's funny too when I think just creative people in general, like, I mean, we're not like writing, classical music with like all these crazy. I mean, it's pretty much it's three chords and the truth, and so a lot of times when we're in the room writing something, two or three guys at the same time will shout out the same word or the same part. What about this? Oh yeah, I was going to say that, because it's kind of like, I don't know. I always kind of feel like we're, not to sound hokey or whatever, but I don't claim to know how to write songs. I just do. I do it, but I feel like it's kind of like a medium or a psychic or somebody that like has the ability to channel other things, and they're just a tool for that thing. And I kind of just feel like when it comes to songwriting, we're all just, I mean, we're lucky that we are somehow able to be like the lightning rod, and then we kind of look up into the sky and hope that lightning strikes, but we don't claim to like know how to harness it. We just wait for it to happen, and then we get to kind of channel it, if that makes sense.
Leslie Mandoki told me the same thing on the show, that he just feels like the conduit, that the songs already exist. They just need someone to bring them to reality.
Yeah, no, 100%. I really believe that. And I think that also is the thing that keeps us going back for more. It's kind of like golf, you suck for 17 holes, but then you hit that one drive and you're like, and it keeps you coming back. And
I don't understand that. Are you a golfer? I don't understand the draw or the love of golf at all.
Well, I like to drink and I like to drive electric vehicles. And so...
See, that I would totally do. I just don't understand, the people, when you hit the perfect shot, you feel it in your loins. It's like, I don't want to feel golf in my loins. I don't get it.
Well, yeah, it's... I love the whole day of playing golf. I love all the aspects of it. And actually hitting the shot is the most nerve-wracking part. The rest of it's really enjoyable.
See, I'm a skydiver, and most people don't understand why the hell I would want to do that. So I guess everybody's got their thing.
Yeah, my doctor told me about a year ago. He told me that he did all my blood work, and he put me on this thing and that thing, and he's like, "Look, we're gonna get all this stuff squared away." And he's like, "I mean, you'll live to be 100. Just don't jump out of perfectly good airplanes and don't do dumb shit, and you'll be fine." And
they crash all the time. They're not perfectly good. That's a myth. Can I ask you the songwriting question, because the answers are always fascinating? This is a question that comes from a craft perspective. So not a music fan, but as a songwriter. Can you give me an example or two of a song that you think is so well crafted that it's a perfect example of songwriting? Something that you're just like, shit, man, I wish I wrote that song. And it doesn't matter the artist, it doesn't matter the genre. It's about the actual construction of the song, but then tell me why.
There are many songs that do that for me, that where I listen to them and I'm just blown away by, sometimes I'm blown away by just the simplicity of it, and like, and then sometimes it's just the craft of it. Like probably my favorite band of all time is the Eagles. And like the song New Kid in Town is one of those songs that when I hear it, I'm like, I can't wrap my head around how fucking good it is and how it keeps building. And then when they could have been done and they could have ended the song, they modulate, and then they modulate again, and then they go into this crazy second bridge, and then they go into this other hook, and it's like, guys, what are you trying to prove over here? But it's one of those songs that every time I hear it, I'm just like, I have to just kind of stop and listen and go, wow, what the hell were they thinking right there? And then there's just other songs too, where just simplicity wins, trying to think of an example of that. Like there's a songwriter, David Lee Murphy, who he's a Nashville songwriter, and he's written some of my favorite songs in it, and they're all just so simple that it's like, he wrote a couple of Blackberry Smoke songs with those guys. I Could Feel a Good One Coming On, Ain't Much Left of Me. And he had a Jake Owen song that I'll Go Anywhere with You, you know, like, and when you listen to it, like it's just perfect. It's like, wow. All right, cool.
The concept of simplicity comes up a lot when I ask that question, that it's so simple anyone could have written it, but they didn't.
Yeah. Well, we also tend to overthink it a lot too. You know, we sometimes feel like we have to beat the last one, right? And sometimes that's, you know, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're constantly trying to outdo yourself. And sometimes you don't really need to do that. You just need to write something cool that feels good, that, you know.
Well, I would think that pressure would be there for a band like Lit. You've got a song, My Own Worst Enemy, that will literally live on forever. It's everywhere. It's been covered so many times. And I would imagine when you're a band and you have a song that becomes so successful that while it's a huge blessing, it can also kind of be a little bit of a curse because it casts this shadow that you have to kind of get out from behind, right?
Yeah, it's the crazy thing about My Own Worst Enemy too is it kind of goes against all the rules of songwriting. It you know, nothing rhymes. There's no bridge. There's really no pre-chorus. It's just kind of verse, chorus, and a riff. And, you know, it's 2.5 minutes long and done. And it's, you know, we used to write, AJ and I would put in, we would come up with a song, we would kind of jam, and we would, you know, come up with the gist of it. And then we would record it on a ghetto blaster on a cassette tape. And then we kind of move on.
I haven't heard somebody say ghetto blaster in so long.
And we would then we'd move on to the next one. And we would, you know, and there were times where we would play these songs in our set and they weren't even finished yet. We would kind of just make words up as we went. We would just do it to sort of see what kind of reaction we would get from the crowd. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think we probably meant to go back in and rewrite those words. We just never had a chance because it like took off. It sort of took on this life of its own. And it was like, we wrote it, then we got a record deal, then we were on the radio, then we were on tour, and we never had a chance to go back and sort of like fix the words, I guess.
If it's imperfect, it's perfectly imperfect then.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of crazy that song, of all the songs, you know, we laugh about it today because we're like, I don't know if we could write that song again today because we know too much.
Interesting.
Like we are our own worst enemies in that sense, because we wrote that out of pure, just, we didn't know any better. And now, you know, hundreds and hundreds of songs later, like we think we know better, but I don't necessarily know that that's the case. You know, we just probably have too much useless information that we let get in our way.
It's been covered so many times. Is there an artist that you think did it best that rivals, obviously, your original version? It's hard to do. It's hard to top the original. There have been a couple artists that have come close, but
there is actually a version coming out. It might be coming out like any day now. There's a it's a very they took it and completely like deconstructed it, and I've heard it done. You know, it's always like an honor, and it's very flattering anytime anybody does it. But like, I don't really need to hear a band do it the way we do it. You know, I don't need to hear just like pop punk 101 cover band covering it. I like when I hear somebody completely take it in another direction, or, you know, I've heard, you know, a girl singer sing it and do it like in a really sad way. And you're like, ooh, that's neat. I never would have thought of it that way. But it's crazy. You know, it's so crazy. I mean, Post Malone did it on his Instagram. And, you know, I've heard like there's all these country guys that do it, and Kelly Clarkson did it, you know, and she killed it. And it's just wild. You know, it's just a wild thing that it reached that many people, and that many people were, you know, inspired to like put their own twist on it. You know, it's crazy.
Tell me about the podcast.
The idea with the podcast was more about the song and the question of why this song. And we ended up just sort of being part of the discussion as opposed to the focus of it. And that was fun because we didn't actually know who else was being interviewed for that. We got interviewed, one day, and then, 3 months later, 4 months later, we heard it. We heard the podcast like everybody else did. And we didn't know like all the people that they had reached out to and all the people and there were a lot of people on there that we don't even know that just, and hearing them talk about it, it was neat. But it was a trip too. It's kind of like third person, like it's weird. Somebody that you don't know talking about you and like analyzing you is a trip.
It's like being alone. It's like being alive at your own funeral. It's like, this is what they say when I'm not listening.
Yeah, totally. It was a little bit like that, but I loved how it, inevitably was about Lit, right? And it was about this song, but it was more about just kind of like people talking about a snapshot in time and why something, and still the funny thing is after 4 episodes, we still don't know why. We talked to experts. There was like, scientists and psychologists and, program directors and industry veterans. And still at the end of the 4 episodes, no one really knows the reason. So I guess it's sort of an open-ended question, like still, why, why that song? Why is it still, 23 years later, still as big as it was 23 years ago? It's baffling,
When I talk to guitar players, there's always these questions about tone and trying to find a tone that expresses what you're trying to say through the guitar. Where do you think your tone comes from? What do you attribute guitar tone to?
Heavy metal. My tone was not in style in the 90s. I had a very 80s heavy metal guitar tone in a time where most bands were using like fuzz boxes and like really weird sounding. My tone was very much like modeled after, Iron Maiden and Dokken and like George Lynch and Marshall, just old school Marshall JMP and JCM 800s. And I would, when I would test my amp, I would just let go of the strings. And if I got feedback, then I was cool. And, I can remember like in the mid to late 90s record companies when, passing on us constantly. And it came up from time to time that they thought our sound was like kind of dated sounding. The tones were, very, very heavy metal, and then, 10 years later, guys are going, dude, where'd you get that? How do you get that tone? It's like, well, it's like literally, it's as simple as a Marshall amp and a Boss overdrive pedal and a Fender Telecaster. I mean, it's like the, Remington 870 shotgun is like the standard, and so is a Marshall and a Les Paul. And it's like, that's it. It's just loud and distorted.
It is amazing that music and that sound from the 80s, how loved it was, and then how quickly overnight, I talked to Dee Snider about it, that he's like, we got a telegram one day that said nobody wants what you do anymore, and it was over. And so I can see how in the era when the band was coming up, that being a fan of 80s music then was not cool at all. It's all come back full circle now, but in that time, it wasn't at all.
Yeah. Well, and luckily for us, we've always proudly waved the 80s flag, even, you can see it in our videos and you can see it in our shows, and you see we've always, it's one of the reasons I think why, Dee Snider, I love the guy to death. He's one of the nicest guys on the planet. And he, and he's a fan of our band and we're a fan of his band. And I think a lot of those guys respected the fact that here comes this band in the late 90s, early 2000s that are proudly waving that flag and kind of, you know, taking the torch and still representing that vibe, but like doing it in this newer way. I mean, it's hard to explain, but we've become friends with so many of those bands from the 80s. And I think it's because they like what we do, but we grew up liking what they do, you know, and there's like this mutual respect. And,
well, and it's fun, right? And so, you know, as we come out of COVID, there's a certain amount of people that have been affected by COVID in a way that they're channeling this angst and sadness. And then the other side of the coin, and I think we need both, that there are the people that just have been yearning to go to a concert and want to have a good time and want to be happy and have fun. And that's what all that 80s music was. It was fun. It was a party.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I personally am not a big fan of, I mean, it is, you know, we've gone through pretty crazy stuff in our lives, and I've gone through stuff, and, you know, if I'm nursing a broken heart, you know, I'll dive into a Don Henley record and and kind of, what would Don do? You know, or I'll listen to a Willie Nelson, or, you know, just anything that like you when you're in a dark place, sometimes you want to, you know, tap into somebody else that's in a dark place, and
you want to feel like you're not alone. That's what's great about that music.
But I feel also, you know, that it's important to also have an escape from that as well. And I feel like with our band, we've always tried to be that. Like we have songs that we will touch. We'll go deep here and there, but ultimately we used to say, like, we're not a headphones band, you know, we're a boombox in the backyard band when you're drinking beers with your friends. Like we're that soundtrack. We're not Rush 2112 where you're going to smoke a joint, put headphones on and just like go, whoa, I just heard it from the left side to the right side. But I think, I mean, God, what a cool thing that we have music that can do both, you know, that can make you cry, you know, you're in a dark place and it could make it darker because you're relating to somebody else's dark place, or you can turn on a song and it completely just transports you to a better time or a better place. And it's pretty cool, man. And what's really cool too is when you go to a different country and you see it react the same way, you know, or a guy, you know, I'll never forget the first time we were in Japan, and a guy with, you know, this, you know, little short Japanese guys, you know, coming up to me and go in very hard to understand broken English, telling me that My Worst Enemy is the story of his life. And I was just like, holy shit, are you kidding me?
Well, that's what's great about rock and roll, is that it crosses every boundary. Gender, race, socioeconomic. It really is an example for the world on, you know, kind of welcoming everybody to the party.
Yeah. Well, it really, you know, we live, I feel like right now the world is more divided than it's ever been since I've been alive. And it's kind of sad that somebody doesn't just come out and go, hey, you know what, dudes, like we have way more in common than we don't. And we don't have to be all the way one way or all the way the other way. Like, look at all the shit that we have in common. And music is really the glue and the sort of the safe zone, if you will. You know, it's like, that's where we can all agree on one thing. And I just think just need more of that, you know?
Well, now that you're getting ready to go on the road, you're going to be able for the first time in 3 years to experience that all over again. Every band that I know that's been able to play shows, you know, coming out of the backside of you know, the lockdown, is that they're feeling this vibe that they haven't felt from crowds in years, that people just want to be at shows together, experiencing the music together. You got to be psyched for it.
We were kind of one of those bands that never really, I mean, the shows were pretty sparse and few, you know, they were, during the lockdown, when it was really bad, I mean, we still managed to get out and do a couple things. And of course you couldn't announce it or promote it because you'd get all kinds of backlash, whatever. But we used the downtime to make a record that we think came out awesome. And I'm glad we were able to do that. But, we did one live stream show and I hated it. The 2 condom thing, would apply to that too. Like live stream just sucks. And I got so sick of seeing videos of people, with split screens and Zooms, and it's just like, oh, this new world sucks.
Yeah.
And, to get back out and to be able to just hug people and shake hands with people and just be sweaty with people and talk. And that's why we do this. I don't want to fucking be on a computer screen or have somebody in their jams watching our show. Like, fuck that. You need to have a couple of drinks and get in the crowd and be with people. And it's an experience, that's why we got into this in the first place. And, so I mean, I can't wait for it. It's still a little weird, certain places you go, are weird. And some aren't. And it's just, it's going to take a while. I think some people, unfortunately, got really used to and comfortable with living in their jams and living on their computer. And I think that's sad, but it's going to take a while for it to shake out, I think, and then on top of that, so many shows have been postponed or canceled that it's affecting touring in the sense that, I mean, a perfect example is Garth Brooks played Nissan Stadium here in Nashville last month. And the day of the show, you could still get a seat on the field, 30 rows back from Garth for $100. And in any other time that show would have been sold out for months, And I think it's just this feeling of well, I'm not going to buy a ticket. I'm not buying a ticket to that show until I see the damn tour bus pull up, because anything can happen. And which throws off the whole, promoters are freaking out because they're there's not a lot of tickets sold at this one show and all, you know what I mean? It's it's a crazy time, and everyone is just trying to relearn it and refigure it out,
Well, you better show up at Mohegan Sun, because that's the last date of the leg, and I'm going to be at that one. So awesome. June 4th at Mohegan Sun, you better be there.
I'm it's funny. I love Mohegan Sun. It's such a beautiful casino and property, and the shows there. It's such a blast to play there. Whenever we get to play places like that, we wind up giving back all the money we made right back to the casino, the blackjack table. But yeah, we love Mohegan Sun.
It's got to be exciting to be able to go on tour right before you release the record too. So I'm assuming getting to try out these songs in front of a crowd for the first time, you got to be psyched about that too.
Yeah, it's everyone always says that their new record is their best record and all that stuff. So I won't bore you with that, but I will say that we have been playing Mouth Shut and Kicked Off the Plane and Do It Again, and we've been playing these songs lately, and it really truly feels, the reaction we're getting from the crowd is very reminiscent of when we first came out with A Place in the Sun. There's some songs that you write and you love and you record them and they sound great on a record, and you play them live, and for whatever reason they just don't translate live. And we've had some of those over the years, and then there's some that you just don't expect, and then they just really translate, and people just react to it. But this new record, it feels like the right time, the right place, and it feels like these songs are connecting with people in just a really cool way. So we're super, super pumped and really pumped to get the whole thing out there, so then we can, it's cool to test stuff out before it comes out, but it's a lot more fun to play stuff, a few months after it's been out and everyone knows the words,
I tell all the bands that I talk to that coming out of COVID and living digitally and kind of being isolated, that you guys finally got a chance to experience what it's like to be a radio DJ. Because we've been locked away in padded rooms talking to ourselves for years now, and you guys finally get a taste of it, and every musician I know fucking hates it.
It's funny because we grew up, AJ and I, our dad was a radio DJ our whole life. And, so we grew up in that. We grew up in radio stations. When our parents were divorced, when we were little, our dad would just like take us to work with him because, it was free. It was cheaper than a babysitter, and we loved it. We would answer request lines and, make fake commercials in the production room. And so when we started, touring and visiting radio, DJs and program directors would always kind of look at us and have to do like a double take, like, what? These guys act like they just walked into their freaking living room or something. We'd be like, where's the kitchen? Where's the coffee? This is like, we've always just been at home in that environment because we grew up in it. But
it is funny because, it's like looking behind the curtain at the great and powerful Oz. It's not as impressive as the show, I will tell you that being able to build my own studio and work in my own studio now, it's a lot cleaner than any other studio I've ever worked in. And you could probably attest to that hanging out at your dad's studio, that usually radio stations are gross.
That is one cool thing I will say because I have friends that are on TV and stuff that are on the news or here or there. And the technology now and the ability to do radio from we started, I remember like K-Rock in LA, the Kevin and Bean was the morning show. And at one point, one of them moved up to like one of the islands and off of like in Washington. I don't even know what the hell it's called. Something Sound.
The Puget Sound?
I think so. Yeah. And he was literally doing the morning show in LA, and he was like literally on an island off of Washington. But like now it's, if you flip on the news and you see all these talking heads and they've got these backgrounds behind them and all that they're literally in the spare bedroom of their house.
Yeah. Technology has made that a little bit cooler. Like, I love being able to control and decorate my studio. And if I leave my friggin' favorite pen, it's going to be there tomorrow. Nobody's stealing my cell phone charger. It is nice to have your own workspace, no matter what it is that you do.
Speaking of, we were talking about Dee Snider earlier. I remember even like 99, 2000, he had a morning radio show, and he had a studio at his house. And so he was never able to come. He would always, anytime we came through town, he would come and pick us up from sound check and take us out to lunch. But then he would drop us off before the show, and he would never come to the show because he had to be in bed by like 7 o'clock to go walk downstairs to the studio. But it's the same way with us. I mean, we make records that way now too. If I hear a guitar part that I want to redo, I would do it right here at the house. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. Technology is, it's made some things more impersonal, but it definitely has made it a little bit easier for you to have access to be able to do what you love more quickly and more comfortably if you've got access to your own studio and your own creative space.
Yeah, back in the day, you would spend, bands would spend $300,000-$400,000 making a record, and you would like live in an apartment down the road, and you would just be at this expensive studio every single day for 2 months, and you had runners and menus and food budgets and silly stuff, and like and videos too. Like you go like, oh hey, we're gonna make a video for the song, sweet, and some guy would charge you $250,000, make some stupid video, and it's like now that's complete. Those days were fun. And don't get me wrong, it's fun to like on a whim have a runner go out and just get you a bunch of stuff. But now to be able to like really make a great record and not have all that going on is pretty awesome. And people are making videos now for $1,000 on their freaking iPhone. So it's kind of I'm glad we got to taste that other thing, but it is a lot easier now to make it, to do what we need to do,
Well, if you're looking to have the location influence the sound, right? Like if Zeppelin wanted to go and, be in a cottage in Wales because they wanted that kind of isolation. And they, growing up on the East Coast, it took me traveling to the West Coast to understand why your music sounded the way that it did. Not you lit, I mean just West Coast music in general. Because in the Northeast, we're fucking angry a lot because it's cold and we're miserable and it comes out in the music. So when you go to California and you listen to a band like, the Red Hot Chili Peppers or Incubus or something, or you listen to reggae sounds different in Jamaica. Grunge sounds different in Seattle because it has absorbed the essence of the place where it was made. So there's still a certain amount of that if a band does want to spend the money and kind of, absorb the surroundings a little bit. But yeah, I mean, what if you don't have the budget to be able to go and do that?
Yeah. Well, I think now you can go to these places and get inspiration, and get the vibe. And then you come back and you can record it or do it. And you don't have to go live in some expensive building for, 8 weeks, $2,000 a day or whatever they were charging.
Go find an Airbnb somewhere that nobody knows that, you just recorded a record in their house for $100 a day or whatever.
Yeah, no, totally. There's great stuff. You can get on Sweetwater or, even Amazon or whatever. You could get all the tools you need to make an album, delivered to your house in 2 days. And it's crazy. That was another thing back in the day. You kind of needed to go to these studios because they had the best microphones. They had the best board, the best gear, the stuff that you're like, oh my God, we gotta record on that Neve console that, that so-and-so used, Fleetwood Mac did, Rumors on or whatever. And it's but it's I don't know. I guess it's sort of like a filter, on your phone. You got all these filters for your photos. We've got things now that mimic the sound of that board. You can get that plug-in now, and you can get a microphone for $300. That sounds like a $10,000 microphone used to. It's just crazy.
Don't tell Dave Grohl that. Didn't he buy that Neve board that you're talking about?
He did buy that Neve board. Yeah. There's a great documentary about that.
The Sounds, not Sound City, but.
Well, there's that one. And then there's also, I'm pretty sure there's one about Neve, about him, about that. And those boards are just insane. Yeah, I'm not a real weird gear guy, but there's just something about those boards where it's a religious experience.
There is a little bit of reality to, I guarantee you if you recorded the same thing through the real Neve board or the plugin on your iPhone, the real Neve board's still going to give you a little, it's why vinyl is making a resurgence now, because there is something about it that an MP3 or a WAV file can't give you.
100%. And you and I would probably notice, but the sad reality of the world we live in today is we live in a swipe left, swipe right world. Content is you got to get them in 20 seconds or they're on to the next thing. And it's and the sad thing is most people are listening to music on their fucking phone, on these
or in the car too. Yeah.
And it's all Bluetooth, and it's all it's losing every step of the way. It's coming through Spotify, which already ruins the sound. And then that's coming through your phone, and it's going through Bluetooth, and it's coming through this. And by the time you're actually hearing it, it's just been beat up and pummeled
squashed
to death.
Shit, yeah.
But, it's just, what are you going to do?
It always cracks me up that, you could be renting a multi-million-dollar recording studio and that you're still going to go out to the car because you want to listen to it in the car to hear what it really sounds like. I forget who was on my show that told me this story, so I apologize to them for not being able to cite them. But they told me that that's what Prince used to do at Paisley Park, that he would go outside to listen to the tracks in his car and they would be burned on a CD, and that if he didn't like it, he would huck the CD into the lake next to his house. And so if someone got some scuba gear on, at the bottom of that lake, there is all of this Prince never released music that he recorded that he didn't end up liking sitting on the bottom of that lake.
Wow, that's pretty good. Well, we all do car mix tests. I mean, and everyone has their own, you're used to whatever speakers you're used to. So
yeah.
you can go in the fanciest room and it sounds killer, but then you got to go to what you're used to hear the balances of the mix and all that.
And we're all dealing with our own hearing loss too. Especially the older you get in this business, there's certain parts of it you just don't hear anymore.
There used to be back when we had Radio Shacks, they used to sell this little speaker. It was a tiny little, I don't know. I mean, the whole box itself was maybe like 6x6 little cube, and it had like a walnut finish, and it was just this little weird speaker. It was $25, and we used to have one. We would bring one in to the studio. So we'd be listening. We'd be in this like multi-million-dollar recording facility that, all the coolest bands did their shit at. And we were listening to these speakers that, cost more than your house. And then when we were just about ready to like say, okay, we would like put it through this little tiny $25 Radio Shack speaker because it mimicked a TV speaker, which back then MTV was the big deal. And, ideally you wanted it to sound good coming out of a little TV speaker before everyone had like surround sound and shit. And we would literally mix to that.
You know that Radio Shack is back, right?
Is it?
They brought it back online only, but RadioShack.com is a thing. And they have all of the stuff that you and I grew up being able to go to the store and like comb through all the little adapters and wires and gadgets and stuff. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Radio Shack is back.
Well, that's good. That's awesome. I'm gonna go on there right after this and browse.
Jeremy, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
My pleasure. Sorry for all the technical crap, but
no, it's all good. I'm glad we got to catch up. Congratulations. The new album is literally due out in a couple weeks. I mean, we're waiting.
It's coming. June 17th, Tastes Like Gold, and we will see you at Mohegan Sun.
Yeah, you'll see me the last day of this leg of the tour. I'll see you June 4th at Mohegan, but you can go on your website. I have all of the links to all of your sites in the show notes so that people can go and get tickets when you're coming near them. So it'll be nice to have you guys back out on the road. Everybody could use a little fun.
Absolutely. Well, we're stoked. Looking forward to it.
We'll see you later. Thank you so much.
All right, darling. Appreciate you.
There he is, Jeremy Popoff from the band Lit. Their brand new album, Tastes Like Gold, comes out on June 17th, and you can see them wrap up their spring-loaded tour at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut coming up on June 4th. If you want to hear the My Own Worst Enemy podcast we talked about, there's a link in the show notes of this podcast. And while you're there, you can also check out the corresponding playlist for this episode. I put together a playlist for every full-length episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast, which is always full of music from my guest and all the other music and songs that we talked about in the interview. You'll also find all of Jeremy's social media links, all of the band Lit social links, and, well, you'll find all the Mistress Carrie links there too. And if you liked what you heard, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast. New full-length episodes come out every Wednesday. Plus, every weekday, you get the Sit Rep. The Situation Report gives you all your rock news, music headlines, and industry info in less than 5 minutes. Join me live every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern on the official Mistress Carrie Facebook page for Cocktails in the War Room. Get more details on that and everything else at MistressCarrie.com. Just in time for summer, you can also get your new Mistress Carrie tank tops. The Mistress Carrie podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Venture X from Capital One is the travel card for people always asking,
where next?
You earn 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy with Venture X. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details. At Progressive, we know there's nothing like the feeling of riding your motorcycle with your buddies on the open road. It's a potent cocktail of thrills, laughter, and pure adrenaline. A feeling that would be impossible to recreate on the radio. Until now. Hit it, sound effects guy!
I'm real proud of you, son.
Wow, that was terrible. Our apologies for even trying. Quote with Progressive and see if you could save with America's #1 motorcycle insurer. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.